Shalom, and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of our weekly Rashi study class with Rabbi Rebecca Schatz.
We're on verse 10. So just a reminder, we were introduced to Vashti last time, and probably today we'll still be within her story. But first we're going to kind of re-enter the world of King Ahasuerus and who his people were, and talk a little bit about them. The one thing we can spend as much time on them as you'd like. The one thing I will just say is that I think if we can stick to who these people were in the Megillah rather than who they might have been, in all other times, we just might get back to Vashti a little bit more quickly. So we will go through this verse. I just don't want to spend all of class on this one verse, but there are a lot of people. So if you would like to share something interesting about any of these people, feel free to do so. Okay. So verse 10. Does anybody want to read verse 10 for us?
Yom Hashvi'i Kitov Lev HaMelech Bayayin Amar Le Mehuman Bista Charbona Bikta Ve'avagta Zaitar Ve'charpas Shivat Hasarisim Hameshartim Et Pnei HaMelech Achashverosh.
Okay, tell us what you're talking about.
Well, on what verse did I just read? 10.
Mm-hmm.
On the seventh day, when the king was merry with wine, he ordered Mehuman, Bezita, Harbona, Bigta, Abakta, Zatpar, Karkas, the 7 eunuchs in attendance on the king Ahasuerus.
Okay. So what's already one thing that either we know or that we would ask about based off of this list of people?
What did he order?
List of men. Okay, great. What did he order? Anything else? The king was drunk. Great. So the 7th day of what? For those of us who are Jewishly calendar minded, you might just automatically think that this was Shabbat, which is what Rashi's going to say, that our rabbis claim that this was Shabbat, but who knows if that was the case. It was just the 7th day of this feast that was, or party that was happening in the palace. Anything else, people? There's a lot of people on Zoom today. So anything anybody on Zoom would like to share? Anybody in the room?
Hi.
Hi, Rick.
Hi. The way he's described as drunk, it's Kitov Lev. So the word Tov there, he's a happy drunk, is the way I would read it. It's not he's angry, right?
Yeah.
It's not he's sleepy. It's Kitov Lev, and it raises his heart. So he's a very emotional kind of guy.
Great.
Like that.
Yeah, no, great. And it's interesting because who decided that he was Ketov Lev, right? Like, does he think he's a happy drunk? Do other people engage with him as a happy drunk? Or is it just the fact that he was feeling good because he had been drinking, which is another option to what Ketov Lev might have meant. Any other questions about, Joel? Great. Why do all of these men need to be mentioned specifically? And what role are they going to play needing their names to be mentioned specifically? Any other questions? Yeah, Stevie.
What is Pnei HaMelech?
Good. So at the end of the verse, it says, Et Pnei HaMelech Achashverosh. So what does that mean, right? Pnei HaMelech would be the face of the king. It could also mean in the face of the king or at the face of the king, or in the presence, right? Tova said of the king, but it doesn't say that. It says at Pnei HaMelech, right? All of those things, all of the translations I just gave could be good translations, but why then use the words at Pnei HaMelech? Yeah, Tova.
You could also ask the question, though it's sort of going to be answered with what's coming up, but it kind of foreshadows it of why they specify it was 7 eunuchs who were called Serasim.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm thinking of scenes in Bridgerton where you have the queen and her servants are behind her. And these guys are in front of the king as though they're waiting for his beck and call.
I'm going to beat Marshall the punch and read something from Alter, and then I have a question about it, another word. So in terms of who these 7 advisors or eunuchs were, these 7 Persian names, rather mangled in Hebrew transliteration, matched by the names of the 7 ministers in verse 14, are part of the writer's effort to endow his story with vivid Persian local color. There may also be an intended comic effect in the string of foreign names. So these guys are Serasim, which is often translated as being eunuchs, but sometimes translated as being counselors or advisors. But they're different from Haggai, who was clearly the eunuch, and he was clearly a eunuch who was in charge of the harem. So I'm just curious whether these guys were all, in fact, eunuchs.
In Isaiah, in the Haftorah we read on fast days, it's pretty clear that Saris there means eunuch, because we're talking about establishing, a monument or something, whatever Yad Vashem means there, sort of in lieu of, biological descendants.
Great. The other way that Sarasim is translated, and this is why I opened this particular book, is as chamberlains. So to get back to Diane's point, right, whether or not they are eunuchs, they can also be eunuchs who are chamberlains, right? But the fact that they had that role and were in front of him rather than behind him, I think that was Stevie's first point about why Panei Hamelech, right? It's a really interesting what's the word? Choice of words to be able to explain their role, but also how they represented themselves in front of the king, and also what their job was for the king, to really kind of give advice, to be in front of, rather than just take wow, I have no language. Take orders from the king from behind him. Yeah, Stevie.
I'll also suggest a reading where the king speaks through them, right? And that's what it means. Because, so the king speaks and they are sort of attending the mouth of the king. It sort of fits with the idea that, right, he's telling them.
That's a nice drash. I'm not sure that anything in the verse tells us that or suggests that, but it's a nice drash. If especially visually, if you were to have them in front of the king. But it seems pretty clear from the beginning of the verse that he's speaking to them and that they're in front of him, kind of listening to what he has to say. That doesn't mean that then they don't go on to be supporters of whatever his words are. Let's read the Talmud piece here. Leonard, can you read the Talmud piece? There's quite a bit of, well, I guess it's not. There's some Aramaic. So if you'd like to move from Hebrew to English back to Hebrew, that's fine. Or you can read the Aramaic and just translate it as written.
Oh, we're skipping the Rashi.
Oh, I already mentioned the Rashi, but you can read it again if you'd like.
B'yom hashvi'i Rabbeinu amru Shabbat haya. The rabbi said the 7th day means Shabbat. Okay.
Great. We just had already covered it. Anyway, okay, continue.
Okay, Megillah. B'yom hashvi'i ketov leif hamelech b'yayin. Atu ad hashta latav leba bechamra. Amar Rabba, Yom Hashvi'i Shabbat Haya, Sheyisrael Ochlin V'Shotim, Matchidim B'divrei Torah U'B'divrei tishbechot. Aval umot ha'olam she'ochlin v'shotin ein matchilin ele bedivrei tefilot. Up, tiflut, different word altogether.
Yeah. It's a little different. Okay, so to explain, either read the translation or explain to us in your own words.
All right, I'm just going to wing it over here.
Okay, great.
The verse says, on the seventh day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, the Gemara asks, is that to say that until now his heart was not merry with wine? Did it take 7 days for him to achieve merriment? Rava said, the seventh day was Shabbat, when the difference between the Jewish people and the Gentiles is most apparent. On Shabbat, when the Jewish people eat and drink, they begin by occupying themselves with words of Torah and words of praise for God. But the nations of the world, when they eat and drink, they begin only with words of licentiousness.
Okay, Elon.
Just for the record,
Yeah.
I would like to note that I have known many Jews who, when they eat and drink, engage in licentiousness.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit.
So keep on going with that. What are the rabbis trying to do here?
Well, they're trying to say that, when the Goyim do it, it's bad. When we do it, it's all good intent and it's fine and dandy.
Yeah, it's a really, this kind of continues the idea that our rabbis sometimes wanted to lift up the Jews in stories and make sure then that we were denigrating or pulling down those who were not Jewish. None of this is factual, right? Like, this isn't saying, and then on the 15th day of April, there's no fact here. What we're doing is telling a story to try to create a narrative. And to Elon's point, even in the 21st century, this isn't true, right? Sometimes it's true, but it's not always true. It's not that one category of people deals with words and storytelling differently when they are drunk than others. But I think that they're also trying to, in some way, lift up the aspect of this being the seventh day being Shabbat, and that if it was Shabbat, then that must have meant that the people who were around the table and drinking and eating, etc., were engaging in some kind of Torah. Whereas if it hadn't been the seventh day, maybe it would have been, and therefore Shabbat, maybe it would have been kind of a free-for-all for people to share whatever they wanted to share. And that's why it says the seventh day, and that's why his heart was so merry. Again, it's like a huge stretch to get us to understand why it might have been the seventh day and why that might have been the day that his heart was merry. But I think that both things are true of what I just shared, which is we're trying to create a certain type of narrative. And also there seem to be reasons for us to believe that if it was on the seventh day, Torah might have been overflowing. And that's what was making him happy. Okay, Marshall and then Paul.
I found it rather funny that the word tiflut, tefillot, have the same letters.
Yes.
And
yes.
After we eat, we do Birkat HaMazon.
Very good.
Yes, I don't know if you consider Birkat HaMazon a form of bracha, since there are brachot in it. But here, if you're inebriated, not only can you not spell right, but it changes a positive thing,
very good,
a negative thing.
Great. That's lovely.
I have a question about the significance of the seventh day, because in modern day, nobody else has a Shabbat on the seventh day except the Seventh Day Adventists, aside from us. So would the seventh day have been significant to the Persians?
It's a good question. I don't actually know. I think that gets back to who's answering the question, right? If you ask a question, this is going to take us out of Megillah for just 1 second. If you ask a question of anybody, right, the person who you ask the question to is going to answer it, unless it's like, is the sky, well, actually, no. Even in that case, if you say, is the sky blue, they could respond and say, no, it's turquoise. There could be a different answer. But who you ask the question to is is therefore who you're going to get the answer from. And so I think in terms of your question, Paul, of was the seventh day this type of significance that Rashi and the Megillah are responding to for us? I don't actually know the answer to that question. My guess would be that the way that days were counted for them was that the seventh day was also significant, but that doesn't mean that it was in our world Saturday. That being said, maybe it wasn't, but the reason that our rabbis are responding this way is because for them, that's what the seventh day would have meant. And so for us now, the narrative is being responded to by people for whom the seventh day does mean that. But it looks like Diane might have found an answer to your exact question. Here, you can use this.
So the religion, I assume, of the time was Zoroastrianism. And they did not have a weekly Sabbath. They had a 30-day calendar where each day is dedicated to a divinity with specific days featuring special festivities. So
I figured Tova was going to jump in on this one because Daniel Bornstein, I'm sure you're a fan of his, I don't remember exactly what he was saying specifically, but he talks at length about the different cycles of the weeks and months and years in different cultures. And I can tell you that in Africa, there are different traditions where there are some cultures which have 4-day weeks and some cultures which have 3-day weeks and some cultures which have 7-day weeks. And in modern times, they all interact because those cycles become market cycles, but they originated in the way in which they counted.
Right.
No, not really, other than that. I mean, to the point that I was sitting and thinking about it, that Mesopotamia in general was 7 days, which is not surprising given where our traditions, the Egyptians was 10 days. They had a 10-day week. But I didn't actually know about the Zoroastrians. That's interesting.
Thought I saw a hand. Okay, Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, can I do a trope thing?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so the trope here for Amar is a pazer, which is the rarest trope. So you would think, or I think, that the rarest trope is put there because that's the most important word, certainly of that sentence, let alone the whole thing. It's just intense and it's drama and all that. So it's not the first pazer of the chapter. The first one was on the word Hamelech in verse 5. So again, it's all about the king. Everything is on him. It's like he's the sun and we're all the little satellites, we're all the planets. It's all about the king. And now here it's about what he said. Oh my God, what is he going to say? Amar. Let me say the next pazer is in verse 17, where it's on the name, it's on the word Achashverosh, and then Amar is right next to it with a Ger Shayim on it. So it's all about what the king says and what he doesn't says, and he has such power that he can't even change. It's going to come later in the story, obviously, but once he says something, that's the law, and you can't even change it. He can't change his own thing. So it's a very it's too much power in that is my view of that when you can't take back what you said. But all the drama trope wise is on this word.
Great. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to the next verse, to verse 11. I would suggest that this is the most controversial verse in the story of Vashti. So it's very possible that we won't get much further than this verse today. This is one of those verses similar to Abraham and his idols that you are going to imagine that this verse says, maybe not all of you, but the world is going to imagine that this verse is going to say something that it does not, but that the rabbis are going to add in for us commentary and description and story that's going to create a narrative similar to what we just heard a moment ago to describe the seventh day, that's going to create a narrative that we are going to remember as if it's actual story about Vashti, even though it's not in the Megillah itself. So does someone want to read this verse for us? Go for it, Alan.
להביא את ושתי המלכה לפני המלך, וכתר מלכות לראות העמים והשרים את יפיה כי טובה מראה היא.
Okay.
All right, and it was to bring Vashti, the queen, before the king, in the crown, where they saw the royal diadem, to show off to the people and to the officials the beauty of for the people, because she was a beautiful woman.
Yeah, beautiful to look at, literally. Okay, so questions about this. Don't read too much into it. What's happening here?
We found out what the order was.
We found out what the order was?
On the previous, these two verses are really one sentence, and the previous verse said he ordered them, but it didn't say
the order
what.
from the. I thought you meant order like 1, 2, 3. Yes, the order from the previous sentence. This is the order. Great.
And it's interesting that it takes 7 people to do that. He's calling all 7 of them.
That's true.
Why isn't it 1 or 2?
That's true. That's a really good point. That's a good point, Elon.
Yeah, this sentence is actually quite simple, right? So,
correct.
Like, Vashti, come down, wear a crown because you're beautiful, and that's it. I mean, that's pretty basic, and I'm curious to see what the interpretations will be.
All right. Well, you're going to get them. Don't worry. Any other questions about this or thoughts? Yeah, Rebecca.
I just noticed that there were the 7 eunuchs who are sent to get her, and it's on the 7th day. So maybe the 7 is just reflecting, wanting to use that favorite number.
Great. Tova.
The fact that the words actually say that she was beautiful to look upon seems to foreshadow at least a discussion point about why he's calling her. He's calling her to be bedecked in her crown. And for what purpose? Not that just she in the abstract is beautiful, but for them to look upon her and take in that beauty.
Yeah. So on the one hand, right, to Elon's point, it's a very simple verse. She was asked to wear a crown and to come down to display her beauty, and the people were going to look at her. Now, it's not a great look, right? Literally, for someone to say, I'm going to bring down a human being for you all to just stare at because she's beautiful. I'm obviously doing exactly what I suggested we not do, which is read into what we know comes next. But just saying, and this is why I pushed on Alan's translation a little bit, ki tovat mar'ehi is not just she was pretty. It already said that. Et yafia, right? She was beautiful. It could have ended there. But the fact that it continues to say, because she was pretty to look at, clearly means that the reason for her to show up is to show off how pretty she was to look at. Right now, back in the day, was that such a big deal? Well, I don't know. I wouldn't have liked it, right? So, but I don't know if that's a modern day person putting my thoughts into the past. But I wanted to point out that there's a lot of looking, right? So the word, first of all, when we think about you've already, did you do any of Bereshit with Rabbi Kligfeld? Yeah. Oh, you did. Okay, great. Fabulous. Okay. So there are lots of words at the end of Bereshit and at the beginning of Shemot that are very active words that speak a lot to how the character is being moved around, so to speak. That too is happening here. Lehavi is to physically take, not in a like forceful, God forbid, like rape way, like you're not like forcing her, but lehavi is not, I'm going to ask you to come downstairs. It's, I'm going to take you, right? You are going to come at my beck and call, basically. And then the next word that kind of shows that element of look, or the element of viewing, so to speak, is leharot, right? To be displayed, to be seen by the nations and these officials. And then kitovat mar'ehi, which I already spoke about. So I just want to point out those words, right? Even though it is a very simple verse, when we look at the actual Hebrew, which again, if we're using an economy of language, these are very specific Hebrew words being used. There are many other words that could have been used to get Vashti to just come downstairs and make sure she was wearing a crown, right? So I just want to point that out. I'm not trying to influence the way that we think about this in any particular way, but the Hebrew is very specific to what we're supposed to be doing, which is look at her beauty. Yes, Larry and then Diane.
I just want to make the comment that we're several days past the Oscars, which I did not watch, hardly ever watch, where I think one of the main elements of the Oscars is the red carpet. And I don't know how you cannot make the clear connection. We do this to this very day.
And we have a phrase for wives like this. They're called trophy wives, right?
Yeah, it's a really before Tova shares, it's a really interesting point about the Oscars, or really any kind of display of beauty that we have in today's world. It's not so different than this, right? We want people to see beautiful people in beautiful clothes, wearing beautiful jewelry. And it's a display of beauty. Now, everyone gets to decide whether they agree that that's beautiful or not, but the idea is for it to be displayed to show off something that others should want or find beautiful to see.
I was going to comment that most of the people on the red carpet are there because they want to be seen and are putting themselves there to be seen, though I'm sure there's a certain amount of pressure on them as well. But I think the notion of, we're going to read all of the commentary, but the notion that Vashti is being put on, in a sense, the same level as the courtyard and the food and the wine and the trappings. And now this is this other element of display in the woman that is his that's going to be put on is evident.
Yeah, I had never thought about that before, but that's very true, that we spend all this time talking about the other stuff that we're looking at or that's beautiful. And now we're talking about a person, but it seems to be very, very similar. So we're going to go to the next commentary. You're going to notice that there's no Rashi on this, which does not mean that there aren't other rabbinic commentaries, but there is no Rashi. And I think that when we imagine the types of, let's call it Torah, that Rashi is responding to, it's interesting that this is not responded to. And maybe it's because, to Elon's point, like, at face value, if you're reading this in order, this is a pretty simple, not so hard to understand verse. It's also possible that Rashi wanted people to see this and then move on, right? And not necessarily dwell on it and think too deeply about what this could have implied or could have been or whatever, but just like move on to the next thing. So there is no Rashi on this, but there is a Baal Shem Tov. I only brought the English because it just wasn't an important enough commentary. Not that it's not interesting, but I didn't want us to spend too much time getting through the Hebrew. That was not particularly easy. If you're interested in the Hebrew, I can send it to you. I took it out just for ease. So who was reading before? Alan, do you want to just read the English for us very quickly? The first part is just the verse, so you can just go to the next part, which is.
I'm good. I'm not that good. The Talmud states that she was ordered to appear naked. This is because the impure shells do not have any real existence in the world, only when they are enclosed in some aspect. And since the king requested to bring Vashti, in allusion to the shells, as opposed to Esther, who is on the side of holiness, naked, without a garment, she refused to come. For how could she? She lacks existence without the garments. This is a very deep matter, and not every mind can grasp these holy words.
Okay. This is an extremely convoluted commentary and completely made up, right? Like there's nothing in this verse that says anything about her being naked. It is true that the Talmud says that she was naked, and they come up with that because it says that she was, I don't know why I'm holding this, I guess I'm getting worked up. That she that she was asked to come down in the crown, but doesn't say anything else about any of her other clothing, which, just makes it sound like don't come down in your pajamas, make sure you have a crown on. Like I think that's probably what they meant. But okay, the rabbis wanted to imagine that maybe she was asked to come down naked. I just want to point out that the next verse, not to give anything away, we're going to read it in a moment, but the next verse is where she refuses. And so part of what's happening here is that the Baal Shem Tov and others know what's to come next and are trying to then read into this verse why she might have refused, because there's no real reason in terms of textual evidence within the Megillah that she should have refused. She was asked to come down and then she refuses, and the male commentators, and I'm saying that specifically, can't imagine why she wouldn't have wanted to come down if the king was telling her to. So hold on one second, Elon, I see you. So this, I will use this word. I don't often use this. I actually think that this Baal Shem Tov, let's call it commentary, is actually offensive. I really think it's like beyond, and I didn't bring it because I like it. I brought it because I wanted you to see it. I think it's harmful to how we think about these two female characters. And for people who are only studying the Besht, this could be a problem, right? Because now we have an idea of who Esther is and who Vashti is based off of something that's completely fabricated that has no textual evidence. Yeah, Elon.
So the last two sentences are the ones that are particularly troubling to me for different reasons.
Yeah.
So she lacks existence without the garments. In other words, she is nobody.
Right.
When she puts on her royal garments, she's somebody. But without that, she's just nothing. Right. So that's offensive. Next, this is a very deep matter, and not every mind can grasp these holy words. In other words, you're all a bunch of idiots, but exactly. But for a different reason. Yeah. Correct. Like only I, who am writing this, can understand the deep meanings of this, and I'll explain it to you.
Well, and I actually think it goes one step further in the offensive camp, which is, I think that the Baal Shem Tov wants us to imagine that, of course, this must be correct. Like there's no chance that it should be understood in any other way. And so if you understand it in any other way, that's because you can't fully understand what the Baal Shem Tov understands. That's my read of it. Maybe that's just because I'm mad at the Baal Shem Tov for this, but that's, I think that it's offensive because what he seems to be saying is, I'm smart enough to understand that this is for sure what happened and how we should understand these characters. And if you don't, you're not grasping the entirety of the picture here. Okay, Barry, and then Paul, and then Larry.
So going behind Baal Shem Tov to Kabbalah, reference here that in Kabbalah these shells are known as kalipot. Singular is kalipa, refers to the spiritual layers that conceal God's presence in the physical world. So then we go on that Vashti represents the kalipa, which is hiding the fruit, would be Esther.
I'm not sure that's much better, but yes, thank you for sharing that. Paul.
I have two responses to this. The part about she was naked. The first time I heard this stuff as an adult, I didn't go to services for a long time after my bar mitzvah. Yeah. I heard it from a radical feminist perspective, and they assumed this was this was absolutely true. There was no possible way of doubting that this was what was requested, that she was expected to appear naked. And the other thing is, when I first time I read the last sentence, this is a very deep matter, and not every mind can grasp these holy words. I wondered if they were trying to be funny.
Maybe. It's possible. And I think to the radical feminist perspective, I think it's possible to want to imagine that is what was requested of her because she then refused. I would fight with radical feminists who say that that's a better read, because I think the stronger read actually is that she was asked to do something completely normal and just didn't want to do it and said no. Like I think that actually if someone in the office right now were to say, I need you to, well, I'll just use the same example. I need you to come out here naked so that someone can see you, right? That would be a very easy thing for me to say no to. It's inappropriate. I work here. You should see me as a leader. That's not something that I should be doing, right? It's not something anybody should be doing. But using the story as a mirror here for a second. If someone were to just say, "Can you come out of the room for a moment so I can talk to you?" I might say no because I'm teaching a class, but that takes more strength than someone asking me to come outside naked because that's ridiculous, right? So I would actually push whoever, and I'm sure whoever taught it was a wonderful teacher, but I would push that feminist view a little bit because I think the strength comes in the mundanity of it being just a regular request, and she was doing something else, and she didn't want to have to respond to the king in that way. So yes, I think it's possible, and also maybe she just didn't wanna, and so she didn't have to.
Okay, I guess I have a deep mind because I'm going to take the Baal Shem Tov's point of view, at least from my perspective on this. Yeah, how many of you, if any of you, have seen the opera Akhenaten? It's really too bad. It's a spectacular opera. There is this unbelievable scene where Akhenaten is now he starts off naked on the screen. He's on stage, he's naked. And then he is clothed in his royal robes. He's actually held up by his attendees and turned upside down. And then the robe comes down on top of him. The breech and linen breeches, it's all connected to the priesthood and what the high priest is wearing. And then he's turned around, and then because he's wearing this dress, what do you call the hoops that women have with a hoop skirt. Like a hoop skirt, the hoop comes out and the skirt comes out. And when he's all done, this is a completely different character, different visual going on. The clothes make the man, the phrase. And you think about, again, what we do. So to some extent, it's possible, I think, I'm not sure this is what the Baal Shem Tov is talking about, is maybe the pshat of the text is not that only the crown, but the royal diadem might have been representative of, in all of your glorious robes and jewelry and costumes, because then you come out representing the queen. And that's what I want. And then jump to your interpretation, which I agree with. She says, I'm busy. I'm not going to do that. I don't have time for this type of thing. So it seems to me that maybe this is what Baal Shem Tov was talking about.
It's 100%. And I think that the idea of saying to come down in the crown is exactly that, is that there were certain, similar to the Kohanim, right? There were certain garments that had to be worn when you were showing off who you are to the nations. And so that's very possible. I've never seen the opera, but it sounds very powerful. Okay, Stevie, Elon, Barry, Tova, Rebecca, you had your hand up and now it's gone. And then Rick. Oh, sorry, Leonard. Okay, but Stevie first. Yeah, I didn't see your hand. I just saw the microphone.
I think you carve out a bit of a middle ground here because the text is, goes out of its way to say the king was drunk when he suggested this. So I think we can understand that this suggestion is inappropriate in some way, but we don't have to go as far as to say like, oh, in your crown means in only your crown.
Right? Yeah, it's a good point that we as a class are reading these texts with a lot of interpretation in between them. So it's a good point that Stevie's making, which is that it says that he was drunk. That being said, I and many others most likely have been drunk and not requested that people come out of, a bar or restaurant or whatever naked. So I think that there are...
I don't think we need to assert the nakedness in order to imagine that Queen Vashti was...
It was not a safe space.
It wasn't merely in her rights, but was sort of, doing the proper thing to say this is a bad idea.
Yeah. Elon, I think I called on you next.
I just want to push back a little bit on what Larry said, which is I think your point is well taken about it gives a different persona or a different idea when you have the royal garments. But here it says specifically she lacks existence. It doesn't say she becomes more important with the garments. It says she lacks existence. And that to me is, regardless of what one says the garments would have done in terms of her power, in terms of the way she appeared, lacking existence is a problem.
Yeah, there was a singer, I'm forgetting who it is, who decided no longer to wear any makeup. Who was it? I can picture her face. It'll come to me. Anyway, and I think it's the same kind of idea that especially for those who are often on display, whether it's at the Oscars or on a stage, you see them dressed up, made up, etc., and you imagine that's what they look like. Now, we all know that it's not what they look like, but we can't picture them any other way. And so to kind of strip someone, not necessarily naked, but just of what their usual look might be, I think is a beautiful thing, but the way that it's being described here as then this person is on nothing, right? Which is a really degrading and also very hurtful thing to say about someone, especially when those things that they are wearing are performative in a certain way to show a task and a job and a leadership position, rather than like this is the way that I express myself via fashion. So I don't know who I called on next. Rebecca? No, Barry? I don't know. I don't remember who. Sorry. I think it was Barry and then Tova and then Rick.
So a lot has been said on this already, but going back to 1:9, the word gam. And so while Ahasuerus was having his feast, Esther was having her feast in her palace.
Right.
So they had parallel identities. And now Ahasuerus is interrupting her parallel feast, and now she must become what he says.
Right.
So she's becoming his object, and it interrupts her gam.
Right. Yeah.
That's very close to what I was going to say. So I'll just that it undercut the actual agency of Esther. That yes, as you pointed out, she was holding a feast for the women, and to understand that wasn't just this frivolous tea party she was throwing. It was as much an issue of state as what the king was doing, which she perceived. She was engaged in this whole opera or this whole performance that they were solidifying their power with. Probably had a good guess that they would be drunk, and that this was not in the service of what either of them wanted. And so to reinvest her with a lot more solemnity and agency than any of these interpretations.
Yeah, Rebecca. And then Rick. Actually, let me do Rick first because I had called on Rick first, and then Rebecca, you can go after. And then Leonard. Rick, go ahead.
Just on the word refusing, the next word of the next sentence, it's the same word that Joseph uses with Potiphar's wife, just in the feminine. So if you're looking at all the details, if it's a sexual kind of thing or not, if you're trying to balance it out, that would go on the side of, it was a sexual kind of thing that she had to use. She could have said, she said no, instead of refusing. The vatama'en, the same verb. That's all.
Yeah. You're jumping ahead, Rick. Rick jumped ahead. Yeah, Rebecca.
I was thinking maybe since this was a men's party, they had as entertainment some female dancers, strippers. And so maybe the king wanted Vashti to come and wear your royal crown so they'll know you're the queen, not just one of the other strippers or dancers. But she interpreted it that it's going to lead to more, requests for stripping, whatever. And so maybe she overreacted, but maybe she was told to wear the crown so they could distinguish between her and the other dancers.
Yeah, maybe. Lovely Josh. Leonard, and then Paul also has his hand up, and then Diane.
Okay, so I have a couple of things to say here. Number one, if Vashti's having her own party, and she's probably also drunk, which gave her the fortitude to say no to the king, which is something that you can't do normally. So
that's interesting.
The other thing is a question came up earlier about why did they send 7 people to get her?
Yeah.
I think I may have found an answer here.
Okay.
I just can't see it. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's do it this way. Okay, so the main task of the eunuchs was to take care of the large number of women. And this time they were sent, 7 of them were sent, the eunuchs were sent as a sign of for the Kavod HaMalka, for the honor of the queen. That's why they sent 7 people there. And it also says here that the number 7 was holy to the Persians, and it has some other references to that. Hosea.
Great. Okay, Paul, go ahead.
I can't stop thinking about Rashi not having nothing to say on this verse.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's not bothering Rashi about this?
Right.
Not that the verse, like as you said, Rabbi, not that the verse itself jumps out at you, but if you're familiar with the Talmud, which he would have been, right? Like, why not talk about it? It's super interesting to me.
Yeah. I agree. It's kind of like when you hear a piece of music and there's a really interesting rest, right? It allows you to appreciate the rest of the music. When Rashi doesn't have something to say, you wonder, wait a second, why not? Why didn't he have something to say? Shouldn't there have been at least something that he could have said about this? Maybe not a translation of a word, but he could have had something to say. Paul, did you have more?
No, that's it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up again. Diane.
So think about the parallels of the 3 women in this story. You've got Vashti, who the king is trying to control, and he can't. You have Esther, who the king kind of controls, but in the end, she gets her way. And you've got Zeresh, who who knows what's going on. She knows the score, and she advises her husband. And the 3 very powerful women actually in this story.
Yeah. Okay, let's read Esther Rabbah. Let's read Esther Rabbah. This is yet another example of kind of narrative being written into the text, which is more likely because it's Midrash than just the Baal Shem Tov. But let's read through it again. I just gave you the English just so that, because I knew it would take us a while to get through it if we also had the Hebrew. So let's just read through the English very quickly. Alan, I think you were reading.
Rabbi Avu said, the atonement.
I did give you the Hebrew. Sorry.
Oh.
I had scrolled too far to not see it. But if you would like to follow along in the Hebrew, you have it right here. Okay, but do just read the English.
Okay. Rabbi Avu said, the atonement of Israel is that when Israel eats, drinks, and rejoices, they bless and praise and acclaim the Holy One, blessed be He. But when the nations of the world eat and drink, they engage in matters of.
So this is bringing in what we saw from the past verse. So you can keep going.
This one says, Medians are most beautiful. That one says, Persians are most beautiful.
So basically a bunch of men are sitting around and saying, she's more beautiful than that one, is basically what they're getting at.
Mm-hmm. That foolish one, Ahasuerus, said to them, the vessel that this man uses, i.e., that I use, is neither Median nor Persian, but rather Chaldean. Do you wish to see it? They said to him, yes, provided that she be naked.
Okay, I just want to stop really quickly, just so we're sure that we understand what's going on here. Basically, Larry's sure. Basically, what happens is these three guys are sitting around. One says the Persian woman is more beautiful, and the other one says the Median woman is more beautiful. And then he says, well, you should see the vessel that I have, which is referring to a woman. That I use, by the way, is the word that is used here. And I'm not looking at the Hebrew at the same time, but I don't know why they would have put that in English if it wasn't in the Hebrew. Okay. Well, Mishta Meshbo that I use. Yep. Very, very much use. Okay. And then the guys he says, do you want to see this vessel? Right. Do you want to see this piece of meat is basically what he's saying. And the guys say, yeah, but she has to be naked. Okay. Alan, continue. Just want to make sure that was clear. Wait, hold on. Let's read the rest of the commentary. Yeah.
Tamesh, but tashmish is the rabbi's what do you call it? Euphemism for sex. So it doesn't necessarily
tashmish hamita is the euphemism for sex, which means to use the bed. Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't necessarily mean use like one might think if you just translated it that way.
Okay. All right, keep going.
All right. He said to them, yes, and naked. Rabbi Pinchas and Rabbi Hama ben Guriah say, in the name of Rav, she sought to enter with only a sash, like a prostitute, and they would not let her. He, Ahasuerus, said to us, her attendants, and naked. She said, I will enter without a crown. They will say that this is a maidservant. Even if she wears royal garments and enters, they will say she is a maidservant. Rav Huna said, a commoner may not utilize royal garments.
Okay. How we get from a verse to this is like really, really beyond me. But this is exactly why people, I mean, I have taught classes on Vashti specifically, where if you say, what was Rashi asked? The response of the class is she was asked to come downstairs naked. First of all, there's no downstairs. Second of all, it never says naked. But the reason that people think that is because this is a very famous midrash. This is a midrash that most people, if they are learning about Vashti, have also learned this Esther Rabbah piece. And it is a real good story, but none of it is based in anything that is actually being said in the verse. And what's even more interesting than Paul, I'll call on you, what's even more interesting is that it also, the attendants seem to be kind of like dismayed by her, right? They seem to also think that she's not doing the right thing, which from everything that we know from the Megillah, they were at a party with her and thought she was totally fine. There was no problem with the maidservants and Vashti's relationship. So again, instead of us just throwing the men under the bus here, we're just making Vashti out to be a villain, and everybody around her is kind of commenting on how inappropriate she is and her poor choice of behaviors. Paul,
the comment that I made earlier that I heard this from a radical feminist. The same individual said, we aren't, I forget the first word, we are now rabbinic Jews.
Yeah, true. We are. That doesn't mean we have to agree with them. Yeah, Larry.
This is a question. I'm lost.
Yeah.
I understand the story completely up to yes and naked, and I'm lost about Rabbi Pinchas and Rabbi Hama ben Guriah and what's going on there. I'm missing something very simple, so someone explain that last part to me.
Yeah. Does anybody else want to try? You want to try, Paul?
I'll give it a
Yeah.
I'll give it a shot.
Okay.
It looks like somebody's imagination was just running away with them.
Okay, well, good. Yes, definitely. But so what seems to be happening here, I'm just going to move this because I can't really see. What seems to be happening here is that Rabbi Pinchas and Rabbi Hama bar Guriah are saying that Rav said. So 2 rabbis are saying that another rabbi taught them that Vashti sought to enter. I think that they're talking about her party, not the king's party. The reason that I think that is because it then says that they would not let her, but that Achashverosh said to the attendants, and I think they are the they here, and she says, I will enter without a crown. So what's happening here is that the rabbis are making her out to seem as though she wanted to be even more inappropriate. And the servants and the attendants, and Achashverosh were trying to say, no, we want you to show up in a way that shows who you are as a queen, that we need you to be in certain garments, including the crown, if only the crown. And so what they're saying here, and this is to Rebecca's point, actually, I think it was Rebecca's point, actually, in terms of like the clothing that you're wearing is going to keep you separate from the other women who might be in attendance. That's how I seem to be reading it, but that doesn't mean that I'm correct. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Because I think to Rebecca's point, right, if she was seen as just a commoner, she wouldn't get the same kind of not only attention but reception is the word I was looking for who she was and why she was being asked to join the party. Yeah, Barry.
Just searching Esther Rabbah for the meaning of sash. What's this sash? And there it's referring to one of the priestly garments, the sash that was worn. The priest wore the sash to separate the upper body from the physical, the heart, mind, and the physical desires. So this sash that the rabbis are clothing her in the sash, Vashti is not saying that she's going to wear a sash. It's the rabbis who are putting this into the story.
Okay. I think. Do you want to comment on that?
It seems to me that it's flipping. It's first presenting the rabbinic attitude that in their drunkenness they had asked for her to come naked, but then they're quoting Rav as saying it was actually she who precipitated the idea of nudity, and they are in fact saying, no, put on some clothes that'll show you're a queen, which puts all the more onus on her.
Yeah, you said that much more eloquently, but that's exactly what I meant. The one thing I would just be careful about in terms of the priestly garments here, I don't believe, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't believe Tziltzu Kezonah has anything to do with the temple. And I'd be worried that we would read that into the temple times. Zonah is a prostitute, a whore, literally. But the sash that you're talking about, Barry, is something that still people wear. That the idea that while you're davening, you should kind of be separating the parts of your body that might have desires that the heart and mind and soul should not have. That's a whole other class for a whole other time. But I think to Tova's point, they're basically vilifying her by saying she wanted to show up in these things that would be inappropriate, and then they, including Achashverosh and her attendants, say no, actually we need you to show up like a queen, which again is just making a hero out of the people who we want to see as heroes and making a villain out of the people who we want to see as villains. Yeah, Joel. It's just the part here that says biksha likanes afilu b'tziltzu kezonah. So biksha would be that she requested or she asked to. Yeah, I don't think that's what it's saying. It's possible that the way to read this is that they said come in naked and she said, can I at least wear a sash? I'm not sure that's what it's saying. That's a much better read. And and then they're kind of like going back and forth on, okay, but no, you have to you can wear a crown. The one thing you can wear is a crown, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, that we can look more into this and more into the explanation of this for next time. The one thing the whole point of bringing this in general, not to say that the nitty gritty is not important, but the whole reason to bring this in general is because this is just a commentary. This is just a midrash. This is not the Megillah. So the next verse that we're going to read, not to give anything away, is that she's going to, though Rick already did, is that she's going to refuse, right? And so all of these commentaries in midrash are allowing us to understand why she might have refused. But what we're going to do next class is we're going to read the verse from the Megillah, and then we're going to read the next verse from the Megillah, so that you can see that within the Megillah, it's actually not so clear, other than just not wanting to show up, why she would have refused to show up to a party. All right. Good morning, everyone. Bruchim Tihiu.
You've been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast website or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, please visit www.tbala.org.